Hello, and welcome to Leadership is a Philosophy, Not a Checklist, Chapter 6.5, The Spirit. This is the last chapter. This is the last of what I consider the archetypical leadership model. These are the two. This is the last of the two that we're missing. So when I first started this whole program, or this whole project, I did my initial, this initial playlist for YouTube, and then realized that I was missing two chapters, one on power and one on the spirit, because they're there. And they took a long time because I had to do a lot of thinking and a lot of reading. So this is what I think is the last part that was missing from this playlist. So what I want you to understand is that this is the best that I can do. And so if you've got better ideas or you've got something that I'm missing, I really need help. I feel like I'm a crazy person because this is so obvious, but I haven't seen it written this way anywhere. And so I just think that I synthesized it in a way that's very interesting. But it's complicated and it's as simple as I could make it, but no simpler. So you got to go through the whole thing. This is not a 5-minute video. Okay? And so what I want you to think about as you're going through this is relate it to yourself. Because what I have done is observed. And this is all observations, and this is things that I have seen that I am putting together, because none of this is really written in a place that people can look at. All right. It's going to be long, but I'm going to go as quick as I can. So, individual spirit. Does a person have a spirit? Here's the thing. I don't care if you think they do or not, because the evidence is we believe that people do. Because why? Look at the words that we use. We use somebody that we say that somebody's animated or they're listless. They're inspired or dispirited. They have a soul or they're soulless. They're conscious or they're unconscious. They're lively, they're lifeless. I've heard the phrase, they have heart. I don't think heart works. I think heart is somebody trying to do something physical for spirit, because you can see a heart. You can't see a spirit. And then spark of divinity. I've heard that several times too. Is it a soul? I don't know. But everybody's got a spirit, and there's the words we use to do it. So it's not really worth arguing about. So let's look at some quick definitions. So anima, for animate, is your inner self or your soul. Spirit is a force that animates beings. So there you go. Inner self, soul, animated. And then soul is an animating principle susceptible to happiness or misery. So these are the words that we use when we're talking about individuals and people. Okay? So we're going to look at some contrasts. So you've got the individual spirit, right? So you got the yin and yang symbol. This is also called the Tai Chin. And so I'm using this because this is a great graphical way to describe what we're talking about. It's a reference that makes sense. So you got good and evil, strong and weak, profound and superficial, valuable, wasteful, peace, violence, competence, incompetence, full, empty, meaningful, pointless, healthy, toxic, challenging, safe, nutritious, pablum. These are all words that we use, right, when we're talking about things. And this symbol represents the balance between them. So I want you to think about this. Every time that we're doing this, a person has this inside of them. This is their spirit. This is a graphical representation of your spirit. Okay? And we all know this, right? Why is this symbol so pervasive? Okay? So we're going to go through a couple more things here. So the spirit of an individual. Now this is where things are going to get kind of funky. So what you consume mentally, or what you allow yourself to be in the environment of, impacts the density of your spirit. What I mean by that is, so the density flows from your spirit. So if you are hanging around a bunch of people that are completely superficial and completely shallow, you're not going to necessarily be able to have any sort of a profound conversation with them. And so then your spirit is going to be all focused on being superficial and shallow. And so then when you're called on to do something that requires you to use your soul or to make a metaphysical decision, you can't. So then your actions flow from your spirit. So if you're around a bunch of toxic people, you're going to get some of that toxicity, and then you're going to be toxic. If you're around people that are doing good, you're going to get some of that, you're going to do good. So then you radiate what's in your spirit. And we've talked about this before, right? That's a person of substance, or they're feckless, they're useless. So the content of your spirit exerts positive and negative force. I don't like magnetism. I think gravity's better. So I'm attracted to and I'm repulsed by this person. This is going to sound like a complicated concept, but this is just the way I see it. So here's the Taijin. So 2 points. So right here is a quote from Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who wrote the Gulag Archipelago. It says, "The line between good and evil runs through every human heart." This is the whole quote. "Gradually, it was disclosed to me that the line separating good and evil passes not through states, nor between classes, nor between political parties either, but right through every human heart, through all human hearts. The line shifts inside us, it oscillates with the years, and even with hearts overwhelmed by evil, one small bridgehead of good is retained. And even in the best of all hearts, there remains an uprooted small corner of evil." Okay. Now this is what I want you to think about. I agree with what he said, but he just described this symbol. What I want to do is change the idea that you can get the good and the bad to move around. They're like two vessels. So you got the light side and the dark side. And just like he talked about, in the middle of the light side, there's some darkness. In the middle of the dark side, there's a little light. So what you put inside of that vessel creates gravity. So you're a leader, or you're in an organization, and you walk in and the boss comes walking around every day. "Oh, hey, let's go, rah, rah, rah." Or, "Today's the day, today's winning. Winning's the only answer, blah, blah, blah." And that's all they ever say. It's like you're stuffing that part of your soul with marshmallows. If all you're doing is living your life through hashtags and TikTok videos, you're just putting marshmallows in the good side of your spirit. So what does that attract? Somebody comes and needs somebody with some substance, and they're not attracted to somebody that's just a bunch of one-liners. Same thing goes for the dark side. If you hang around a bunch of people that are always tearing everybody down, and they're always being negative, and they're always doing that, or you're always doing that, then that's actually more dense than the marshmallows. So even though you're saying all the cute and pretty words, you're acting in an evil and mean way. So a great example of that is, the whole virtue signaling thing. If you were acting in a way that was consistent with what you were saying, you wouldn't have to say it, because doing is much more powerful. Like I said, your actions flow from your spirit. And so if all you've been fed is a bunch of one-liners and a bunch of fluff, then when something bad happens, all you have is one-liners and fluff. There's no substance to your actions. Worth thinking about, right? And so that's what I'm talking about with whatever you put in that vessel creates gravity. So the size of your spirit is the same. It's what you put in it. So what's the difference, right? 500 marshmallows, little one-liners, or 1 ounce of gold. The ounce of gold is going to be more dense, have more gravity than all those marshmallows. So that is a person of substance. This is the way that I see it. And like I said, this is the best I can do. All right, so this is an individual. All of this is true for every human being. All right, next, organizational spirit. Does an organization have a spirit? Of course, right? Look at the words we use. This is the same for the other slide. Team spirit, esprit de corps, high morale, inspired team, mind numbing or conscious numbing, soulless or soul crushing. I hate this job because you go to work, it's like you're dragging a 50-pound weight behind you. So then definitions. So corps, esprit de corps, a body of persons acting together under a common direction. Okay. Morale, state of spirit of a person or group identified by confidence, cheerfulness, and the willingness to perform tasks. And then resonate. So how is everybody working together? Shared or common emotion or belief. And then harmony, I just love. There was a couple definitions of harmony. This was the second one. Relationship in which various components exist without destroying each other. All right, so now what happens? So this is the next part about spirit in an organization. So individual with their stuff and another individual with their stuff gets together to do something. Well, what do they create? They create another spirit. Okay? So their interaction now has its own vibe, its own aura, its own taijin, right? Its own spirit. So then whatever you allow into that relationship creates the density or affects the density of that relationship. So if it's just you and somebody who they like to sit around and have a glass of wine and talk about sports, well, that might not be the person that you're going to go to when things get really bad, because that may be that all that person talks about. But now you've got this team spirit, and that's the spirit of the team. It's got the good, it's got the evil, it's got all these things. So then what happens when you do 4 people? Well, I drew a bigger circle to go around this, but you got to think that every one of these little taijin in here has a different density. And so what if you have somebody in this group that happens to be really kind of toxic and mean? Well, they're going to start rubbing off on these other people because their spirit, their essence feeds the other spirit. This is the best I can do. I know it sounds crazy. It sounds so simple. It has to be wrong. Okay, so that's fine. But still, with these 4 people, everybody is kind of keeping an eye on what's going on. So if somebody starts getting too bad and the other 3 people go, look, we can't do this anymore. Well, then maybe their concentrated spirits are going to be able to fix that person, or he or she's not going to stop hanging around, or going to stop hanging around. What about here? Well, now look, it's just every one of these individuals has their own density, and then the team spirit has its own density inside of the density of the organization. And so each individual attracts, resonates, repulses, and this is ethereal, right? Where's your checklist for that? Where's your program for that? You see what I mean? So now let's go to the spirit of a team. 2 people, I just did that, separate and combine. So they together negotiate what's allowed. And then the spirit of the team will eventually impact you, because if you're in that presence for 8 hours a day, or you're working in that spirit, it's going to have an impression on you. Pay attention to that for later. So you're hanging around in that, you're going to get part of it. And then you're going to take that home to your family or to your pets or whatever. I don't know. And so the field, or I put down magnetic field, or the size of the gravity increases based on the density of the individuals. And so I said marshmallows are gold again. So if all anybody ever is talking about is lighthearted problem, and nobody's solving any problems or doing anything significant or actually dealing with human issues, that may be the vibe of that. It may be, oh, well, don't go talk to those guys, because all they're going to do is tell you, I know I can predict the one-liners are going to say, because I know what they've been fed and they don't have anything original. And so, questions. All right. So these are questions that I have. I think I know the answers, but these are questions that are still unanswered. So the density or significant matters. Is a key person in an organization? You hear, oh, let me get the key personnel. Are they key because of the title, or are they key because they're significant? Well, in most organizations now, they say, let's have the key people, and the people who just happen to be a person in charge are the ones that are called up to make the decisions. And they're actually the ones that should not. The one that has the most influence, or the one that has the densest spirit, or the ones that people will voluntarily follow, should be the key people in an organization. Right? Not the people that are full of fluff and problem. You see how that works? So I decided to get rid of the word manager in my slides. I don't want to have to go back and redo all of them. But you need managers. You need management. So the person that is in charge is not a leader. They might be a management type, but I'm not picking on managers. I'm not, because they're necessary. So now it's the pick. The person in charge versus leader. If you just take some random person and put them in charge of an organization, instead of somebody who's a leader who has the talent and the character, is it the same as giving your organization a bunch of marshmallows or a bunch of gold? Well, we know the answer, right? So you need to take somebody who's a leader and put them in the place of power. And then, of course, keep an eye on them. But you can't just take somebody and give them a bunch of certificates and put them in charge, because that's all they've got. They don't have the talent. They don't have the ability. They know it. They know it in their soul. They know it in their spirit. So what do they do when they get up there? Then they start yelling and screaming, I'm a genius. You guys are all idiots. So how do you temper the dark side of this organization, knowing that it's always going to exist? You can't get rid of it. It's there. That symbol is there. It's not changing. What you put in it changes. So I put down training, observation, screening. Make sure that you don't hire somebody who's got an agenda or who's toxic. And you train and talk to people about how to deal with it, how to observe it, how to keep an eye on what's going on. Let's not let that creep in here. Let's not let jealousy and negativity and tearing each other down and calling each other names and how come they got something and I didn't, jealousy, let's keep that out, right? You got to observe that. Something that's made me mad ever since it happened was, big deal happened a couple of years ago in a major army installation. And the guy in charge in a meeting said, wow, I read that report and it just hit me in the gut. I couldn't believe that was going on. Well, that meant that dude had never left his office. That meant that dude did not go out and check anything. Because if you really care, you're going to go check. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that in a minute. So then, this is my other question. When should someone's role be to keep an eye on the organization's spirit? I don't know. I mean, the Army answer is 4 to 8. That's when you start having leaders at different levels. But you got to have somebody, if it's 8 people, somebody's got to be keeping an eye on the spirit for these 2 people or these 2 groups. Somebody here, somebody here, somebody here. And then somebody's got to be keeping an eye on that. Because but this feeds back into the leadership at every level thing that we've talked about a lot. Sorry about that. I forgot that I had stuff covered up. So when should a person's role be to pay attention to the spirit, right? And at what level? Well, that it needs to happen. And I don't know what the exact right answer is. The problem is it's different for every organization. Right? It just is. And then, is the spirit part of the environment? Well, yes, of course it is. Of course it is. Because how can you walk into the building or walk into work and feel a bad vibe in the air? How can you walk in and feel that something bad's happened? Spirit's part of the environment. So, we proceed. All right, so leader's contribution to the spirit. I told you it's going to be a while. So here's leader actions. So they set the tone for the organization, right? We say that all the time. And then, is the tone part of the environment or is it the goal? I think it's the environment, because the goal is still there, but you set the tone in which you're going to accomplish those goals. And then what do? Remember the definition of leadership. And this is what's so funny is it fits, but I didn't know this when I came up with the definition. Because you attune competence and environmental hierarchies in pursuit of the goal. So you find the people that are going to work in that environment to achieve the goal. Now, the 4 characteristics are key for good outcomes. And I'm going to tell you why. So remember the 4 essential characteristics: humility, integrity, empathy, vigilance. Well, you can have the talent, right? The talent is being able to attune all that stuff. So you get the people, the environment, you do all this moving around. Great. Let me move this out of the way for a minute. So there you go. Well, what if you're the man with the crazy mustache in Germany 70 years ago? He set the tone for what he wanted. He had the goal. And then he went out and he found people to help him achieve those goals. Right? And the worst part about it is, I'm going to talk about it a little bit more. I put down a genuine tone brings out the best efforts in people. The problem is, he went and found he needed somebody to lie, so he went and found the best liar on the planet. He needed somebody to come up with a terrible way to slaughter people, so he went and found the most merciless anti-Semitic person he could find. He needed somebody to be the personality, so he went and found a glutton, greedy, all this sort of stuff, found that person who was big and gregarious and would go and carry his water for him. So that's why we got to have character, and that's why we have to keep an eye on people, because the talent can be used for absolute terrible things as well. All right, so questions. Is the leader the warden of the spirit of the organization? I don't know the right word. Is the leader the shaman? So they're the one that's in the world and also checking on the spirit in the environment? Are they the keeper of balance? Make sure that things aren't too strict, too crazy, too much. Keeping things balanced. You know, remember we talked about the shapes of power? Power and spirit, it's the same idea. So we got to change the spirit for a couple of minutes or for a day or for a time, but then let it get back to what you want. I don't know what the right word is, but yes, all of these things. Part of the leader's role is to set the spirit. Now, the person in charge has an impact on the spirit, but I don't think they're conscious of it. So what is it about this is a question that I have. And actually, I'm going to ask those at the end. So here we go again, right? So the leader's keeping an eye on this. Does the leader need to be in the middle of this? No, only if there's some radical dispute. Leader need to be in the middle of this? No. Where's the leader in this one? Well, all over the place. Checking on here, checking here, checking here, checking here, checking out here. I couldn't make the thing as big as the screen, right? Got to remember the camera. So remember, person in charge or leader, no different. As an individual, they all have the same characteristic of spirit. Well, then here's the person in charge actions. So these are all your people with your deluxe certificates and all of your great all their certifications that say they're amazing. So they set numeric goals. They put sterile policies into place. You know, anonymous hotlines, focus groups, 360-degree evaluations. But then they don't enforce any of them. They just have 15 different policies and plans that nobody checks on and nobody listens to. Right? Tell me that's not true. And then they go around and brag about it. Oh, our organization has got all this engagement. We've got all these engagement plans. We've got all of these ideas that are going to make our employees love us. But then they don't have the desired effect. So people are unhappy, they're grumpy, they're grouchy, they're complaining a lot. So what do? They hire some external agency, some consultant to come in, and the consultant goes, oh, you should use this plan instead, and you should use this plan instead. So they put more systems in place or change the systems. They still haven't gone out and talked to anybody. They still haven't left the office. They're still up in the C-suite. They're not walking around, turning off their phone, turning off everything, dressing like the people, going and working with the team for a day. Just, I'm here to work. Everybody leave me alone. I'm here to work. I don't want to talk about anything but what we're doing. But then something happens, something filters up that there was some sort of problem, and they'll deny that the problem existed because we had the plan. Go back to my thing that I did on Activision Blizzard. They had all these sexual harassment plans, and a woman committed suicide because she was sexually harassed. And then they came out and denied it, said, no, we've got these great plans. That's what a person in charge does instead of a leader. Leader doesn't need any of those plans. Questions? So what is it about this environment, the person in charge environment instead of the leader environment, that makes people want to do the absolute minimum? I got to answer my own question. Is this programmed behavior? So we send these people off to get all these certificates. We don't talk about anything spiritual. We don't talk about anybody's soul. All we talk about is numbers, results, drive the team, get the numbers, make the board happy. But the employees are miserable. Up here I put down, They brag about these external agency awards. I mean, I've seen at external agencies that say, oh, this organization was voted the best environment for fill in the blank, blah, 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 blah. And then you've got all sorts of sexual harassment going on that was really happening, but they were bragging about their plans and all this sort of stuff. And so some external agencies talking about, I don't care about the external agency. Do your people like you or not? Do your people want to work there or not? It's all of this stuff is at the highest level, and we're not dealing with the individual spirit. Anyway, so is this the other question? Is it lack of talent? Because, people in charge are not idiots. Well, is it lack of character? Or is it there's some sort of spirit sense that results in this blindness? Is it because we have never told anybody that they actually have to go talk to people? Maybe we make it some part, the leader's role. You're going to go check on the environment. The environment's the spirit. This is your job. Yes, make us some money. But your job is to check on the people. I'm not doing too bad. So here's 2 questions down here at the bottom. So is mentorship, true mentorship, actually sharing a portion of the spirit? Because the person in charge, you go to them and say, ooh, I need mentorship. And they say, oh, cool. Do this job, this job, this job, this job, and you'll be a millionaire. Go to a leader and say, I need mentorship. What do you need? Well, I'm worried about this. Well, what do you think? But next thing you know, you're having a whole conversation. And then you've shared part of your spirit with that person. And then they're trying to aspire to be you, or to aspire to do what you told them to do, or suggested that they do, because you never really tell them what to do when they come for mentorship. And so if the person in charge is just a bunch of certificates and numbers and one-liners and cool leadership quotes, is there mentors? There's no mentorship there. There's just, here's career guidance, which is completely different. Because I've talked to people that came to me for mentorship and told them they needed to change their job. And it was hard because he thought he was doing what he wanted to do. Came to me, we talked for a couple of days. He did what I suggested, but I told him to think about, obviously. About a year later, called me, was happier than he'd ever been in his whole life because he was loving his job. But I could tell, right? What's the person in charge do? Oh, here's the hotline. All right, so here we go. This is the concluding thing. So the question, what is it about this that makes people want to do their best? And what is it about this that makes people want to do their minimum? Here we go. All right, so individual spirit, organizational spirit, and then the person in charge, because they got their own spirit. So the individual gets hired. They pour their heart and soul into the organization. We say that all the time. I poured my heart and soul into my job. Well, if the organization is soulless and empty, then what do you get back? Money. I mean, let's not say money's not important, but so then you don't get any return, and so you get burned out, right? You go from having a full spirit to having a half of a spirit to having an empty spirit, and then you're spiritless and you're lifeless and you're listless and you're a drone. So you don't achieve any sort of potential. You're just there grinding away. So then what happens? Well, I don't have anything left to give. So then they do the bare minimum, because the bare minimum you can sustain. See how that works? Actions flow from your spirit. We said that at the very beginning slide. Remember that? Actions flow from your spirit. So if your spirit's empty or the organization's draining it, well, then your actions are not going to be to feed the beast. Now, let's look at the leader. So, remember we said all these numbers and systems. Well, there's no spirit because they're not checking. And then maybe things aren't going right. So then they put more numbers and more systems in. We need more plans. I had this vision. It's right when I was starting to do this. Some organization is going to watch this and go, oh, we need a spirit plan. Let's get a spirit checklist. But you know what's going to happen. So there you go. And then the person in charge doesn't know what's going on. They have no clue because they're not checking, because they don't have humility. They don't have empathy. They don't have integrity. Now, they might, but if they have put these numbers and systems in, where's the integrity to go down and check and see what impact your numbers and systems are having? What if your cool plan is so obnoxious that it pisses everybody off? And I'm saying that, I know I'm saying it, but they get so frustrated with all these new systems and all this sort of stuff. And you go, oh, but this system is supposed to fix stuff. Well, it's not fixing anything. It's just draining the people because you got a thing. It's all numbers. There's no spirit. All right, here we go. So leaders, so individual, same thing. They pour their heart and soul into the organization. This organization has high esprit de corps. They have high morale. They've got good spirit. There's something going on there that makes it worthwhile. Well, then they get rewarding and fulfilling work. How many times have you heard people say that? My job is not fulfilling. People just say it. We don't even think about what we're talking about. So then what happens? Well, now it's a cycle. You get rewarded, so your spirit goes from full to half to full again, so you pour more in. So then you reach your full potential that way. Or you at least have much more potential because you're putting more into it and you're getting stuff out. You put more in, you get stuff out, until you get to a point where where there's some balance, right? The Taijin, where there's balance. You're putting in what you're getting out and you're happy with that. Maybe you put in a ton and you get a ton out. Maybe you're putting in too much and you don't. Well, whose job is it to watch that? The leader. The leader comes down here and checks. Hey, I noticed that you've been sort of, half-stepping. What's going on? Maybe it's the spirit. Maybe it's something happening at home. Something is impacting their individual spirit. They don't have anything to give. See how this works? It's just, it just works. So, something terrible's happening at home. So, hey, let's ask a little less of them so they don't drain themselves and become bitter and burned out. It may be they can only give the bare minimum for a week. Well, take care of them. Fulfill them. Their spirit will get filled up again. All right. So then the organization, esprit de corps, high morale, it's rewarding and meaningful. So the leader's able to do this. The leader puts numbers and systems and checks the spirit. Right? Maybe you need to take away a bunch of numbers and systems. Maybe you just go down to one thing. I want you to do these 3 activities. The leader might know I have to get these 7 results, but here's the 3 actions I need. Just do those 3 things. I'm going to get the numbers that I need. But you don't talk about numbers. You just talk about how they're doing it. All right. So here, this is for both. This is for both the person in charge and the leader. So upper management, if they don't have leaders at that level, they just have persons in charge. They push for numbers and systems. And then they'll burn everybody out. The person in charge panics, puts more numbers and systems in, gets less results because they're putting in so much extra work that nobody can do anything. And then they get fired, or they freak out, or they start abusing people, and all these terrible things. A leader will try to get the results with the fewest changes possible. But then you keep pushing somebody for numbers for a long time. They're just like, I'm not going to do that. Then they're going to get frustrated and they're going to leave. Right? Because they know there's something in their spirit. They know that they can get this done. Favorite example, this past couple of years, I heard of a big company, Fortune 500 company, because of the pandemic, increased their stock price by 20% or something ridiculous like that. And then, as a reward for all of those people that worked really hard during a scary time and all this sort of stuff, they put most of the company to part-time work because they have to keep showing growth. We got to keep showing an increase. They increased the stock price by 20%. So what's the price of your employee's livelihood? Sure, you saved a bunch of money because you don't have to give them health care and all this sort of stuff, but you have no heart. You have no soul. You couldn't go to the board and say, look, I'm not doing it. We've done this. We're going to keep these processes going, but the people that got us here, we're going to take care of them. I mean, think about it. It's so insulting. All right. So then this is the interesting part, because here you've got a person in charge. Probably doesn't have the spirit sense we talked about. They're getting all this pressure. They don't know what to do. All they know how to do is fall back on numbers and systems. you've all talked about, everybody that talks about it, the leader that they'll follow is the person that deflects from the crap up top, just defends, doesn't let any of it filter down, or as little as possible filter down. Well, okay, that's cool. The problem is, if the leader has I'm just going to use the example, a soul of gold, and every time they're dealing with the organization or an individual, they're giving a little piece out, well, what are they going to get back? Right? They're going to get back less because some of that gold is going to stick in the organization and it's going to stick in the individual. So who fills the leader? Who checks the leader's spirit to make sure that it's getting refilled? Because then the leader will get drained and burnt out and all this sort of stuff. Well, that's why I talk about the solution, right? My solution, which is the leader's not in charge for more than maybe two to 2.5 years, maybe 3. Then you get some months off for free. Just go away and then come back and write, read, mentor, teach at the leadership development program for the organization. That's all you do. So then you're talking about leadership, gives you a chance to think. You're not under any pressure. But then, because you're a leader, you go back and get in charge of another organization. Well, that goes to the power part. So this is the best I can do, and I think this is it. This is what was missing from all the other stuff, so it's there. And so this is why people talk about all the time. I resonate with my boss. I resonated with this person. People talked about it with teachers. I had this teacher that I would do anything for because I just resonated with them somehow. Well, it's the same thing in an organization. If all we care about is numbers, that's all we're going to get is numbers, and they're all going to be bad. Go all the way back to the leadership problem, right? I forgot to put it on here. This individual or this organization, everybody's got high cortisol. Lots of stress, lots of stress, lots of stress. Guess what you got here? Serotonin, serotonin, serotonin. Even though there's stress, you know that you've got the confidence to go ahead and take on the challenge and confront the challenge because the leader's going to take care of you, organization's going to take care of you. So that serotonin overrides the cortisol. These people are all sick. They're all calling out. They're all anxious. They're paranoid. Physiological. It's a spiritual thing, but it has a physical impact. All right. I'm going to close with what started this, or what got me thinking about this, or what has been rattling around my brain about this. So this is Schofield's definition of discipline. This was in 1879. Right? So it's a guy, general, giving an address to the Corps of Cadets at West Point. It says, the discipline that makes the soldiers of a free country reliable in battle is not to be gained by harsh or tyrannical treatment. On the contrary, such treatment is far more likely to destroy than to make an army. It's impossible to impart instructions and give commands in such a manner and in such a tone of voice to inspire in the soldier no feeling, but an intense desire to obey, while the opposite manner and tone of voice cannot fail to excite strong resentment and a desire to disobey. The one mode or the other of dealing with subordinates springs from a corresponding spirit in the breast of the commander. He who feels respect which is due to others cannot fail to inspire in them regard for himself, while one who feels and hence manifests disrespect towards others, especially his inferiors, cannot fail to inspire hatred towards himself. The irony of that quote is that I had to learn it in officer school in the Army, and I was standing with my back against the wall getting screamed at because I didn't have it memorized. But that's been rattling around in my brain for a long time. But there it is. So in 1879, we're talking about spirit in commanders and spirit and stuff and spirit and things. Anyway, this went long, but it really requires some thought. And like I said, this is as simple as I could make it, but no simpler. So no 5 minutes. Alrighty. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate your patience. And hopefully this was, let me do that just so you can see. Yeah. Hopefully you get something out of this. Have a great day.